Hello, and welcome to the Fall Junior High Drama Performances. As you know, our rehearsal process this semester has been interesting. We've had some ups and downs, as we all have in this year. But all through that, our students have really persevered to bring about an awesome show, and I can't wait for you to see it. Before you do, I want to tell you about some unusual things that you should expect. One of which is that students in both productions are wearing masks over their nose and mouth. That can make it a little bit harder to understand them, but I promise they've done their absolute best to make sure that they're telling the story well. Another thing that you'll notice in the sixth juror is that some of our actors are online students and they've filmed themselves from home. So we've inserted them into the video. You'll just have to use your imagination to pretend that they're right there in the courtroom with everybody else. They're all such good actors, and I can't wait for you to see these shows. So without further ado, enjoy the show.
It is the purpose of this preliminary hearing to establish beyond any reasonable doubt that on the afternoon of July 28th, Clay Trevor did willfully murder his guardian, Alexander Breyer. My associate, Commodore Franklin, is the prosecuting attorney.
Yes, if it may please the court, Your Honor. Miss Slater and Mr. Will assume my duties in this case because of my friendship with the Breyer family.
We will call qualified witnesses to establish that Clay Trevor had motive and opportunity to commit this crime. The state will then demand that this case be held over the grand jury. We will. If it pleases the court, I would like to remind the sixth juror that this is a legal hearing, not a sewing circle. I find their clicking needles distracting and their general attitude not at all befitting a conscientious juror.
If juror number 6 will kindly put her knitting away. Miss Nettleton.
Oh, yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Willard would like you to stop knitting. He finds it distracting.
Fiddlesticks! Nothing is more soothing to the nerves than knitting. You should try knitting yourself, Jeff Willard. You're entirely too tense.
The sixth juror is interrupting my opening address.
The sixth juror? Oh, mercy, I am the sixth juror. Though I don't see why you can't say my name. It seems that everyone is identified by number these days. Give up my knitting? Never. You see, knitting helps me think, and someone should certainly do that at this hearing.
There's nothing in the statute which prevents a juror from knitting. Miss Nettleton, if you could please knit a little more quietly.
Of course, Your Honor. It's almost finished anyway. It's for my sister, Hannah.
Juror, this delaying the hearing.
Mr. Willard, I grant that this is highly irregular, but we must remember that Sands Crossing is a closely knit community. Stenographer, can you read that one back?
Would you like me to read that back? Just so the court can hear your opinion, Your Honor?
Yes, just read that one back for us.
Mr. Willard, Your Honor, this delay the hearing. Judge Thompson. Mr. Willard, I grant this is highly irregular, but we must remember that Sands Crossing is a closely knit community. Stenographer, can you read that back?
Mr. Willard, we've all known each other for years, Miss Nettleton, before retirement taught most of us at our local high school, and some of our children too. If there are certain formalities in the proceedings, we must treat them sympathetically. I believe your colleague, Ms. Slater, for the prosecution, yes? Please proceed.
Your Honor, if I may,
Yes, Miss Shannon?
my client, Clay Trevor, would like to make a statement on his own behalf.
That is highly unusual at this kind of preliminary hearing.
Your Honor, the defense feels it is necessary for the jury to hear Mr. Clay Trevor clearly state that he is innocent. That is his right.
All right then, Mr. Trevor, you may address the court.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Clay Trevor, and many of you may know me. Mr. Breyer was like a father to me, and I loved him. Me and him had a strong bond, and although we had our independence, I did not kill him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trevor. Now you may proceed, Ms. Slater.
The state calls as its first witness, Sergeant Joan Tolliver.
Sergeant Tolliver will take the stand.
Your name, please.
Sergeant John Tolliver, State Trooper, stationed at Sands Crossing Patrol Office.
You were on duty the afternoon of July 28th.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell the court what happened that afternoon?
We received a call at about 1:10 p.m. from Alexander Breyer's place out on Parrot Island.
Who made the call?
Ella Meredith, Mr. Breyer's housekeeper. She said that Mr. Breyer had been shot, and she asked us to come at once.
And you responded to the call.
Yes, ma'am. We took the police launch. That's a boat. And we reached the island in about 15 minutes.
For the record, can you tell us the exact location of Parrot Island?
Poppycock! Everyone in these parts knows where Parrot Island is, Kate Slater. Well, you used to go swimming there when you skipped English class on Thursday afternoons.
Miss Nettleton, it is purely as a formality that the location of Parrot Island be clearly stated in the record of this hearing.
Let the record also show, Your Honor, the sixth juror was asked to refrain from any further remarks.
Yes, noted. The sixth juror has been reminded. Now, where were we?
Miss Nettleton, Poppycock.
No, before that. Obviously before that.
Slater, for the record, will you tell us the exact location of Parrot Island?
You may answer the question, Sergeant.
Parrot Island is a small island on the river owned by the late Mr. Breyer. It lies halfway between Sands Crossing and the town of Lockwood.
Why did you take the police launch to the island? There's a main causeway from the island to Lockwood.
The causeway is on the far side of the island, facing Lockwood, and that's more than 15 miles away from Sands Crossing.
Listen to me, Sergeant.
Well, we reached the island and we met Commodore Franklin there. He just sailed across from Lockwood Marina on his skiff. That's a boat.
Commodore Franklin say why he had come to the island?
He said he had an appointment with Mr. Breyer. We moored our boats at the landing bank and went up immediately to the house. Of course, Commodore Franklin was alarmed to hear of the accident to Mr. Breyer and accompanied us.
Yeah, and what did you find at the Breyer house?
The housekeeper, Mrs. Meredith, took us to the library, where we found the body of Alexander Breyer. He had been shot. There was a bullet wound in the chest.
Did you conduct a search of the island and the house?
Yes, ma'am, I searched the house myself.
Did your search reveal anything unusual?
I found a .38 revolver in one of the bedroom closets. It had been recently fired.
Bailiff, if you would.
Exhibit 1A, Your Honor.
Exhibit 1A, what we found on the scene.
Now, Sergeant, you said you found a gun in one of the bedrooms? Whose bedroom?
Clay Trevor's bedroom.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Hey, Missy, Your Honor. There's a little question I'd like to ask.
It is not unusual for a juror to seek clarification at a preliminary hearing. Does your question have a direct bearing on Sergeant Tolliver's testimony?
Well, I certainly hope so. You know, I'm no criminologist, but there's something wrong here. Definitely wrong. If I were a murderer and wanted to dispose of the murder weapon in a hurry, and I had the entire great big river surrounding me, I'd never stash the gun in my own bedroom closet. It just doesn't make sense. But someone else might have hidden it there to throw suspicion on Clay.
Why, Amanda, I believe you're right.
That makes clear sense to me.
Leave it to Mendel Nettleton to find a fly in the ointment.
Oh, you're very kind, Mrs. Kitten. Oh, by the way, how did my home remedy work in your mother's lumbago?
Right as rain, she even painted the barn yesterday.
Silence in the court. There will be no further outbursts. Miss Nettleton, I believe you've made your point.
Thank you, Your Honor.
We call our second witness, Miss Alice Bedford.
Do you swear to tell the truth, Miss Bedford?
I do. You are Alice Bedford, personal secretary to late Mr. Breyer.
That's right. I was employed by Mr. Breyer for 5 years.
And you live in the house in Parrot Island.
Yes.
Who else shared the house?
There's Beth Collins, Mr. Breyer's niece, Miss Meredith, the housekeeper. Then there's Miss Potts, the vain cleaning woman, and what was that? Who did she say?
Will the witness please raise her voice for the benefit of the court?
I'm sorry.
Who else lives in the house?
Clay Trevor.
Was he related to Mr. Breyer?
No, Clay's parents died when he was very young. His father was Mr. Breyer's best friend, and after his parents' death, Clay moved to Parrot Island, and Mr. Barr's been like a father to me since then.
So he was lucky to inherit the fortune. He had a motive.
No! How can you accuse Clay of such a terrible thing? Oh, Clay, I just know you didn't do this.
It's all right, Alice.
Order. Miss Bedford, you will answer the questions that you were asked only. You may not address the defendant. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand, Your Honor.
Now, Miss Bedford, did you handle Mr. Barr's legal affairs?
I'm the executor of the state.
So the terms of the will are well known to you.
Yes.
Now, before he died, did Mr. Barr indicate to you that he wished to change his will?
I don't know why you need to ask me. It's obvious that Miss Meredith has been listening at doors and has already told you everything you need to know. She's very observant and will be able to tell you everything that's happened in that house.
What a very idea! I have never been so insulted in my life.
Just answer the question, Miss Bedford.
Mr. Barr told you that he changed his will?
The afternoon Mr. Barr was the afternoon he died.
Okay. And who are the beneficiaries of this new will?
Mr. Barr didn't live long enough to make a new will.
That is very convenient for the current heirs. Now, remember, Miss Bedford, you're under oath. Who are the heirs of his present will?
Mr. Barr's entire estate was divided equally among Beth Collins, his niece, Commodore Franklin, Mr. Barr's friend, and Clay Trevor.
Is it possible that Mr. Barr planned to cut one of these beneficiaries out of the will?
I don't know.
Is it possible that he's planning to exclude Clay Trevor from the new will?
No!
Why don't you ask me that question? Why are you prosecuting Alice? I tell you she had nothing to do with this. I was gonna ask Mr. Bright to exclude me from his will at my demand.
Oh my! Well, that's something. Whatever for. Your Honor, I object to these interruptions.
Sustained. We will have no more outbursts in this courtroom. Does the defendant realize the seriousness of the statement?
Of course I do. I asked Mr. Bright to exclude me from his will because I wanted to make it on my own. I was going to leave Parrot Island, and I didn't want his help. I wanted to prove something to myself.
A no gesture. Now, isn't it true, when you found out Mr. Barr was planning to cut you out of his will, you killed him before a new will could be drawn up?
That's a lie.
I'm sorry, Your Honor. Sit down, Clay.
I think Mr. Trevor's admission speaks for itself. I have no further questions. Miss Nettleton, you're out of order!
Nonsense, Amy. I've never felt better in my life. My dear, you mentioned that the estate was divided equally among 3 people. Beth Collins, Commodore Franklin, and Clay Trevor. Well, I know how people like to gossip in our little community, but isn't it possible that Miss Collins or Commodore Franklin might have learned that Alexander Briar was planning to change his will? After all, he might have planned to exclude either of them too. They had no way of knowing exactly how the will might be changed. I think that either of the gentlemen, or Miss Collins, in the old will, might have had reason to kill Mr. Briar.
You did it again, Amanda.
Why, sure. Beth Collins or the Commodore might have had a reason to kill Briar as easily as Clay Trevor.
Well done.
Objection!
Mr. Willard, just no question has been asked. What are you objecting to?
Miss Nettleton testified. No, she's making arguments for the defense.
You cannot object to a jury counsel. Next time, just stand up and shout, "She annoys me." That's what you need. Stenographer?
Let's keep this moving, Your Honor.
Annoyance sustained. See what I did there? Fine. Stenographer, strike Miss Nettleton's last statements from the record. Miss Nettleton, please write a different from any of the drivers.
It was just a thought.
I, for one, thought it was brilliant.
Me too.
Me, 3.
We call our third witness, Miss Beth Collins, my associate, Miss Slater from prosecution.
Thank you.
Do you swear to tell the truth, Miss Collins?
I do.
You are Beth Collins, Alexander Brier's niece,
That's right.
and you live in the house on Parrot Island.
Well, only during the summer. My work and my apartment are in New York.
Were you present out in the Briar house on July 28th?
I was there during the morning. I left for a walk with the Briar after lunch, a little before 1.
Did you take the causeway?
Yes, I don't like sailing. And though it takes longer, I use my car.
When you traveled on the causeway, did you pass on the other cars?
No, I didn't see another car until I reached Lockwood.
Who was at the house when you left?
Well, there were the maid, the housekeeper, and Miss Bedford. And Clay Trevor was there, of course.
Clay Trevor remained at the house?
Yes, my uncle wanted him drive to Lockwood and pick up his lawyer at the bank. Then Clay was supposed to drive the lawyer back to the house.
To your knowledge, did Clay Trevor go to the bank as planned?
Yes, both the lawyer and Trevor were at the house when I arrived that late in the afternoon. Everything was so confusing. There were police, reporters, and Uncle Alex was dead.
Thank you, Miss Collins. Your witness, Miss Shannon.
Is there anyone who can prove you were in Lockwood the afternoon of the murder? Well, I went to a few shops, but I didn't meet anyone. And why should I have to prove anything to you? I'm not on trial.
This is a preliminary hearing, Miss Collins. We're just trying to get the facts. That's all.
Miss Nettleton, would you like to question the witness?
Gracious now. But there is one little thing. Miss Collins, did you know that your uncle was planning to change his will?
No, my uncle never informed me of his personal affairs.
But as his niece, you must have expected to be remembered in his present will, as Miss Bedford says you will.
Yes, I always thought that uncle would remember me.
The witness is excused.
Come on, next witness, Miss Vera Potts.
Mrs. Vera Potts.
Yes, here I am.
Mrs. Vera Potts, do you swear to tell the truth?
Of course. I do.
You are Vera Potts.
Mrs. Thomas Potts, if you please. Potsy, that was my husband, has gone to his reward.
No, Potts, yeah. Miss Potts, you are employed as a maid cook at the home of late Alexander Breyer.
I am a professional domestic servant at Paradigm.
Do you recall the afternoon of July 28th?
Oh, how could I ever forget? Oh, poor Mr. Breyer. I don't know how that dreadful Clay Trevor could have done such a thing.
Mrs. Potts, how can you say that?
I object, Your Honor, and move to strike. That was clearly prejudicial.
Objection sustained. The witness will not express her opinions or conclusions at this hearing.
Can I check that for Your Honor?
Yes.
Well, everyone knows what happened. Why, I saw him with my own eyes.
What did you see? Tell us in your own words, please.
Well, I was in the kitchen cleaning up after lunch. It was just 1 o'clock.
How can you be so certain of the time?
While I do the dishes, I always listen to my favorite daytime serials. I had just finished hearing Frida Face's like, oh, poor Frida. She can't decide whether to marry the wealthy British nobleman or the handsome young captain from the Swiss Navy.
Miss Potts, if you please.
Well, I was only trying to set the time. Frida's program ends at 1, and I was waiting to hear the theme music for Valiant Valerie. You really should listen to Valiant Valerie.
Miss Potts, will you please continue with your testimony?
The theme music for Valiant Valerie had just begun when I saw him running across from the far side of the house, from the direction of the library down towards the boathouse.
Who did you see?
Why, Mr. Trevor, of course.
Are you certain the man you saw was Mr. Trevor?
I don't know why you keep asking me that. I told you I saw Mr. Trevor.
Sergeant Culliver testified that she received the call from Parrot Island at 1:10. That's just 10 minutes after Miss Potts saw Clay Trevor running from the library. I have no further questions. Your witness, Miss Shannon.
Mrs. Potts, I am sure you are aware of the importance of your testimony.
I know what I saw.
Did the running man pass close to the kitchen window?
Well, not exactly. You see, there's a terrace outside the window, and the man was running on the opposite side of the terrace.
Your Honor, we have measured the distance from the boathouse terrace to the kitchen window. It's more than 350 feet.
Well, I recognized Clay Trevor. Why, he was wearing that same green sweater he always wore around the house.
In fact, Mrs. Potts, you're identifying a sweater rather than a man.
Well, I saw it. Yes, I'm sure of that.
Vera, when was the last time you had your eyes examined?
Really, Miss Nettleton? We cannot tolerate these frequent interruptions.
Well, I can't rightly say, Amanda, but my eyesight's as good as yours.
Vera, what color is the sweater?
Why, anyone would know that's a green sweater.
Green?
Did you get that?
I heard that all right. A green sweater?
As green as they come.
Vera, this is a blue sweater. Why, green would look positively horrible on Hannah's book. It wouldn't suit him at all.
Your Honor, we have no further questions to ask this witness.
Then you may step down, Mrs. Potts.
We call upon a witness. Miss Meredith.
Mrs. Meredith. Do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes,
You are Miss Elmira.
that's right.
There's no need to be nervous, Miss Meredith. Now, you were employed with late Alexander Breyer.
I was his housekeeper.
How long did you hold the position?
About 15 years.
And you performed your duties in the afternoon of July 28th.
Well, I was working at the house, of course.
Will you tell us what happened that afternoon?
Mr. Breyer had lunch with his niece and Clay Trevor. Lunch was served on the patio outside the library.
Yes, what happened then?
After lunch, Miss Collins took her car and drove to Lockwood.
Objection. The allegation that Miss Collins drove to Lockwood is an assumption on the part of the witness.
Objection sustained.
Will you please continue and confine your testimony in answering my questions?
I only know what Miss Collins told me.
Do you know how Mr. Trevor planned to spend the afternoon?
Mr. Breyer told Clay to pick up his lawyer at the bank building, and that is not hearsay. He spoke those very words at the luncheon table.
What happened after lunch?
After lunch, Mrs. Potts took the dishes and took them to the kitchen. Mr. Breyer entered the library through the French doors. He was expecting Commodore Franklin.
About what time was this?
About 10 minutes to 1.
Did you remain on the patio?
No, I wanted to speak to the gardener on the other side of the house.
Did you see Mr. Trevor after lunch?
No, I suppose that he went to the garage to get his car for the trip to the bank.
Yes, what did you do then?
I went to the front of the house with the gardener. He was planting some shrubs there. When I heard something that sounded like a backfire or a shot, I thought it was coming from the garage, but then I realized it had been inside the house. I was frightened. I entered the library and found...
Look, I realize it's true this past weeks, but it is imperative we have your testimony. What did you find from the library?
I found Mr. Breyer. He was lying on the floor near his desk.
You found Alexander Breyer's body?
Yes, but he wasn't dead. Mr. Breyer was still alive.
Oh dear!
I reached for the phone to call a doctor, but Mr. Breyer grabbed my arm. He knew there was nothing I could do for him. And then he spoke to me.
What did Mr. Breyer say?
It was hard to understand him, but I heard the bank. He's gone to the bank. Stop him.
He mentioned the bank?
Yes, those were his words. And then he said, don't let him get away. He did this to me.
And to the best of your knowledge, there was only one member of the household who went to the bank that afternoon.
Yes, and that person was Clay Trevor.
In view of the testimony just offered, I feel this is hardly the time for an interruption.
I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Willard on this one. Is there a certain question you would like to direct to the witness?
Well, I really don't think it was any testimony at all. Mr. Breyer's dying words don't necessarily point to Clay Trevor as the murderer.
3 witnesses have testified to Mr. Trevor's proposed trip to the bank. We know he made the trip-easy return to the house of Mr. Breyer's lawyer.
Precisely. Everyone knows that Clay Trevor went to the bank building to get the lawyer. But don't you find Mr. Breyer's words a trifle odd? Odd? Of course. Why didn't he say that Clay was at the lawyer's? Better still, why didn't he mention Clay by name?
I told you what Mr. Breyer said. It's the truth.
Oh, we're not doubting your testimony, Ella. You've been repeating too many conversations for years to miss a single word.
Your Honor, the fact remains that Mr. Breyer mentioned the bank, and by the admission of welcome to parties, Clay Trevor was the only member of the household who went to the bank that afternoon.
Jeff Willard, you're still as impetuous as you were back in sophomore English. There was another person at the bank that afternoon. Oh, we've been insufferable fools not to realize it. If it please the court, I believe that's the phrase. I'd like to ask Sergeant Joan Tolliver a question.
But this is an outrage!
Miss Nettleton's request is unusual indeed. Since this is a preliminary hearing, I will grant it. Call Sergeant Tolliver to the witness stand.
Sergeant Tolliver to the witness stand.
Joan, you mentioned that you went to Pear Island from Sam's Crossing by boat, right?
That's right, Miss Nettleton.
And you said that you saw Commodore Franklin in his boat as you approached the island.
We arrived at the same time. The Commodore came up to the house with us.
And where did you leave the police launch, Joan?
Well, we moored our launch with Commodore Franklin's boat at the bank. But I don't see the bank.
Yes, Joan, the bank. Really, Your Honor, the English lingo can be so confusing at times.
This is hardly the time for a lesson in grammar.
You were never very good in grammar, Jack. You should have paid attention when we studied homonyms. You see, Your Honor, Joan Tolliver was there, and Commodore Franklin was there too, at the riverbank.
Miss Nelton, I don't like your insinuation.
Why, I meant no offense. Anyone could build a case against you or Joan Tolliver out of the evidence. Let's suppose that you arrived at Alexander Breyer's house immediately after lunch. You might have joined him in the library without being seen by anyone in the household.
Preposterous.
Not at all common. You might have learned that Mr. Breyer was planning to change his will. Is it possible that he was planning to exclude you out of the will and not Clay Trevor?
I demand the immediate dismissal of this woman as a member of the jury.
Why, I'm simply trying to show you how a case can be built against anyone. After you shot Alexander Breyer with Clay Trevor's gun, a gun that you knew was always kept in the library desk, you ran to Trevor's bedroom and planted the gun in his closet. You then left by the French doors in the terrace and rounded the house, where you were seen by Mrs. Potts. Remember, she identified a sweater, not a man. You returned to your boat moored at the bank.
Ridiculous.
You headed out into the bay, and when you saw the police launch approaching, you returned to the bank and joined Sergeant Tolliver. The sergeant thought you were just arriving at Caroline, but actually you were leaving. What were Mr. Breyer's final words?
The bank. He's gone to the bank. Don't let him get away. He did this to me.
Mr. Breyer's murderer escaped to the bank, and Mr. Breyer knew that you had arrived to Parrot Island by boat. I'm afraid, Commodore, that Mr. Breyer's final words fit you very well.
Well, I'll be.
This is better than radio drama.
It's like a detective novel. Say, there was an idea. Anyone know a good publisher?
Joan, do you remember how the Commodore was dressed that afternoon?
Well, I guess he was wearing casual clothes. Maybe a jacket? No, he was wearing a sweater, a blue sweater.
Mrs. Potts identified a man in a green sweater, but we all know she's colorblind and sees blue as green. And it would be easy to call the marina where you moor your boat to find the exact time you sailed on the 28th. They keep a log of all arrivals and departures.
Rubbish.
It might prove that Commodore Franklin sailed much earlier than we imagined. It might prove that he had ample time to kill Mr. Breyer before the police arrived.
I believe Amanda might be right. Yes, Commodore, you could have been the man I saw running toward the bank.
He told me he was changing his will, cutting me out without a single penny. After all these years, I don't know. Somehow, I had the gun in my hand. I knew where he kept it. I didn't mean to kill him. But then, I had to get away. I ran upstairs, hid the gun in Trevor's closet, and ran back downstairs into the library again. Brian kept staring at me as I crossed the room. I think he called my name. He knew I was heading for my boat at the bank. Yes, I killed him.
Bailiff, take the Commodore into custody. This hearing is closed. Mr. Trevor, the charges against you are dropped.
Oh, Clay, I just knew they were wrong to suspect you. Amanda, you're simply the limit.
She probably suspected Franklin all the time.
Oh, it was nothing. It just goes to show you that you're never too old to learn new things. Isn't that right, Jeff Willard?
Yes, Miss Middleton.